When individuals become members of society, they each submit to the norms of that society. And one of the dangers of becoming a member of society is one is forced to adapt to the standards of that society. So today, we will discuss the different standards of society. We have human dignity, human rights, and common good. And we will discuss the different social issues that we encounter in our society due to the conflicts of the different standards. Let us discuss human dignity. When we say human dignity, it refers to an individual or group's sense of self-respect and self-worth, physical and psychological integrity, and empowerment. This is also refers to human life, and it originates from God. That human life is sacred because the human person is the most central and clearest reflection of God among us. Human dignity helps us to know the value of life and how to empower our self-worth towards to our society. And our human dignity help us to give power or strengthening ourselves to give a contribution to our society. Another social standards is human rights. Human rights is inherent to all human beings. These are the basic rights and freedom that belongs to every person in the world from birth until death. Whatever our nationality, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, or any other statuses, we must enjoy human rights. Human rights can be classified into two: natural rights given by God and constitutional or legal or political rights by means of our constitutions and laws. These are the examples of human rights. The most common and basic is right to life. Another is right to liberty and freedom, and right to pursue happiness. These three human rights are good examples of natural rights. Another is right to vote and right to freedom of speech. These two are good examples of political rights. Another human rights is the right to education. Always remember that education is our rights, and this is not a privilege. So regardless of our social statuses and our social life or lifestyle as well, we must enjoy the right to education. And all examples must enjoy of every person here in this world. Another social standards is common good. When we say common good, this is the benefit or interest of all, or this is a democratic standards to all the people within the society. It refers to either what is shared and beneficial for all or most members of a given society. A good example of common good is public safety. For example, nowadays or today, we experiencing a pandemic or crisis health because of COVID. So it's very important that we have a comprehensive plans and programs to prevent the spread of the virus, and we need an accountable government officials to give solutions on this problem. And that is for the benefit of all. Social issues are part of our society. And these are the different social issues which are rampant to our society because of the conflict from the different social standards, which are human dignity, human rights, and common good. We have violence, prejudice, inequality, discrimination, and crimes. So we will discuss the following social issues due to the conflict of the different social standards. One of the most common social issue in our society is violence. When we say violence, this is the absence of peace, or this is the abusing of physical force intended to injure, damage, or destroy. So it means that if someone is injured, damaged, or destroyed by means of their property or physical body, it means the absence of peace, or they are experiencing violence. And violence is against with our human dignity and standards, as well as with our human rights. Another social issue is prejudice. When we say prejudice, this is the general terminology in an unjustified or incorrect attitude towards an individual based solely on the individual's membership of a social group. Or this is a biased judgment on the capabilities and works of an individual or members of a social group. So any judgment wherein it's inhumane, we call it as prejudice. Another social issue is inequality. This is the existence of unequal opportunities for different social positions or statuses within the society. Way back in our history, the most common type of inequality, or the most common example of inequality, is the black slaves or slavery. But today, when we say inequality, it is refers to poverty, or there is an unequal treatment of humans based on their socioeconomic class or social statuses. Or this is the unequal treatment of people towards to the privileged people and those who cannot afford it. Another social issue is discrimination. Discrimination is one of a good example of prejudice, or the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people. But this one specifically on the observable traits of a person, or on the grounds of race, it can be age or sex, or the unjust system or treatment of humans like racism, ageism, and sexism. And lastly, we have crimes. Always remember, when we say crimes, These are the actions of humans which is against with our laws, or an action or commission that constitutes an offense that may be prosecuted by the state and is punishable by law. Always remember that any violation of our laws or any actions against with our laws and constitutions, there are a punishment or violations represented by our laws or our policy. And that is a crime. One of the current example of social issue in the Philippines that violates the social standards is the EJK or extrajudicial killings. When we say extrajudicial killings, according to definition.net, EJK is the killing of a person by governmental authorities without the sanction of any judicial proceeding or legal process. Or in other terms, EJK is an unconstitutional way or unlawful which or since they bypass the due process of the legal jurisdiction in which they occur. And EJK is one of a programs of our president today to lessen the drug addiction here in our country. And these unlawful actions of authorities become abuse. So one of the most controversial phenomenon or tragedy here in the Philippines is the case of Kian de los Santos or the Kian de los Santos killing. According to CNN Philippines, Kian, a grade 11 student, was found dead lying in a fetal position with gunshots to his head after so-called one-time big-time or anti-illegal drugs operation by the Caloocan City Police on August 16, 2017, while Ronald Bato de la Rosa was still the chief of the PNP. The Caloocan policeman alleged Kian was a drug runner, but the teenager's family vehemently denied the allegation. And Kian's death sparked public outrage and cast doubt on the government's controversial war on drugs. And according to the different articles that the human rights crisis in the Philippines unleashed since President Duterte took office in 2016. And according to PDEA, 4,948 suspected drug users and dealers died during police operations from 2016 to September 2018. And one of the statements of President Duterte during his SONA last 2018 based on that controversial issue. This one, photo taken by Ambagbayan, that if your concern is human rights, my concern is human lives. That according to him, that drugs can also cause killings and crimes here in our society. But based on his statement, what is the difference between human rights and human lives? If he is really concerned with human lives. And this is the infographic by Commission on Human Rights, wherein it shows the different statement on understanding human rights and the statement of President Rodrigo Duterte. Your concern is human rights, and according to Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1, that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of a person. Therefore, that human rights is focuses also to our lives or human lives. While the statement of President Duterte opposing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is because if you really concerned with human lives, you should also concern with human rights. Because human rights and human lives is inseparable. They are the same. When we say human rights, under niya rin ang human lives. Human life is also part of human rights. And this is not only a basic social standards, but this is also a universal social standards or universal law. So I must say that we must value human rights, because if you really value human rights, you are really concerned with human lives. Another statement by Universal Declaration of Human Rights that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. No one is above the law, and no one can deprive our life, our property, and our freedom without due process of law. And always remember that according to Mother Teresa, that human rights are not a privilege conferred by the government. They are every human being's entitlement by the virtue of his humanity. Meaning that our human rights is not all human rights are absolute, but by the virtue of humanity, we must enjoy or entitled by our human rights.